Hey guys, it's Kuro. I just wanted to pop in today for a quick video. I was looking online and I remember seeing a topic between, I believe it was Santos and Vars, discussing, well, I wouldn't call it a topic as much as a little bit of anger and misunderstanding in respective areas. But they were discussing, well, the I guess the argument in general was discussing whether or not Wuwa had team building, and I find it kind of funny in a sense because if you're looking for the blatantly spelled out kind of team building in the sense of like reactions, it's not necessarily there. I mean, I guess you can look at outros as like the closest thing. Intros, outros would be like the closest thing you have to something that blatantly rewards you for using certain characters and swapping into other characters. But Wuwa does have a lot of team synergy naturally built into its playstyle. Like the way you typically would play the game, and the more optimally you play the game, the more you discover intricate things with team building. So, for example, let's start from like Resonance Energy and Concerto Energy, right? The lifeblood of the game. Essentially, every action you do generates some of each respective resource, right? Okay. Now, Concerto's good because it allows you to swap out into buffs or maybe swap out into damage. Same thing for swap-ins, or Resonance Energy is good because it gives you access to your ultimates, right? Sometimes it's a huge burst of damage, sometimes it's a transform state that can do great damage over time, sometimes it's a huge buff, whatever the case may be. But the idea is you want to be able to use these things as often as possible because they kind of really modify your character's damage output. Now, more so than Concerto, I think Resonance Energy kind of really determines how you play a character. When I say this, I mean in a way where, for example, when you use a character, your goal on the character is really just to use up the resources and kind of get off the character. I feel like that's the most common thing about Wuwa to something like, say for example, Genshin. But the way you approach it is also very different based on a couple of additional mechanics that the game has. So for example, you have a forte, you have a skill, you have an echo, and you have your ult button or whatever. Those are the main generating resources that you have. Obviously, swapping intro, outro also gives you Resonance Energy. But the idea is you spend the resources on the character, you generate as much of the resources that you can with like while being on the character, and then you move on to another character to do the same to them. People, I believe, some people don't understand or they're not aware that when you use actions on one character, your other teammates get 50% of the resonance energy that was used on that character. You don't get back resonance energy. Well, obviously you get it from using it initially, but they get 50% of whatever you use on the character. They don't. This works for resonance energy, but it doesn't work for Concerto, by the way. So, for example, Concerto, you can only get what you generate for yourself. So that's kind of a little intricate thing between the two of them that kind of influences what your goal is while trying to generate one or the other per character. Now, this kind of creates a playstyle difference, right? So for example, someone like Calcharo, he does have lengthy animations and you don't really want to spend unnecessary time on him, let's say outside of ult, because ult kind of does demand more field time to be able to trigger death messengers. So you want to spend as much time generating and leaving the character as soon as it has nothing to gain. And this will definitely influence the way you play, because the more you understand this concept is the more you'll start swapping. And I feel like this area is kind of where some people get shy about the game, in a sense of they see quick swapping as something kind of intimidating, and when in reality it's not. It's just kind of something that becomes more natural the more comfortable you are, because the idea is if I use my ultimate on, let's say, Zhang Liao, and then I press E, and then I press Echo, and then I press Concerto, your outro or whatever, intro, whichever you want to consider it. Okay, I'm done with Zhang Liao. Until that E's back, I have nothing to press to generate energy. I'm not going to sit there and do basic attacks. That's a waste of time. You go to another character, and you start pressing their skills, right? But you don't do this blindly. You do it with an objective. For example, you know, okay, Cultraro, I want to save up 3 cruelties. You generate the 3 with your E's, or maybe you do like a 1 in the beginning and then 2 later on. They don't have to all be 3 at once. You try to save as much time as you can, because something that doesn't typically get through to most people is you have, if you're doing something like TOA, right, you have 5 minutes to get this I'm sorry, you have 5 minutes, but it's realistically 2, because you want to get 3 stars to get this fight done. But you're not going to sit there and individually press and wait for each animation. When you press a skill, if the character has a lengthy animation, you swap off. So for example, if you DM on Cultraro, congratulations, he's now in practically a 2-second animation. The best thing you can do is swap off to a different character, and then from there use a skill on that character, kind of overlapping animation windows, which saves you time in the long run, right? Because what would have typically been, let's say for example, if you had 2 characters that had 2.5 second animations, right? You start one, and then at like half a second you swap to a different character and use their animation. Instead of waiting 5 seconds for 2 different 2.5 second animations to play out, you just overlap them to make sure that about only, I guess, how much would you say you saved? You would say you saved about roughly 3 seconds, something like that. Yeah, you'd say you saved roughly 3 seconds worth of animation time, not doing each cast individually. You overlap as many of them as you can. That way you have more time throughout the fight. Not only that, but it's also really instrumental in making sure your buffs line up. Because if you have 14 seconds under a buff, you don't want to sit there and spend the 14 seconds individually doing actions, eating up time under the buff on an individual stake. You get what I'm saying? So like, for example, hyper carry teams. With hyper carry teams, it's probably the easiest way to understand quick swap, because you tend to just go to the character, do the most necessary, and leave the character in a position where if you go back to them later, you only have to do the remaining. Like say you are playing Jian, Morphe, and Shorekeeper, right? You start off with Jian, you might throw E, you go to Morphe, you might throw, you know, a couple, maybe you do like your first 3 basic attacks. You go to Shorekeeper, you might do, you know, 1, 2, 3 on Shorekeeper, and you would probably throw up your ultimate. And then after that, you'd go to Jian again, you might throw another E. You go to Morphe, you might do EE, and then you go to Jian, you might do, I say E this many times on Jian because I have a S2 Jian, I have an SS Jian, so I have multiple E's, but you get the idea. You just go, use what's available, and then you activate your Echo, you go back to Morphe, you do whatever to get the rest of his resonance energy. I'm sorry, not resonance energy, is Concerto. That way you can trigger back into Shorekeeper, get her buffs up, get Jian, you know, ready to go, all lined up, everything stacked on Jian as he's doing his ultimate, because his ultimate lasts like I believe 12 seconds, and you want to get as much of that lined up within Shorekeeper's buffs, Mortifee's Heron buff. If he has the 5-star gun, you want to get him lined up under that buff. You kind of want to stack those windows as much as possible. So time, it's all that to say, time is kind of an essential resource in itself also, right? And it really affects the way you play, because it really determines how long you want to spend on each character, what you really want to do on each character, right? And it also affects what characters are synergetic together. Like, for example, something that a lot of people don't really know is, like, you can do something like a Kalcharo Jinshi team. It's absolutely doable. You just have to be really good at swapping and catching, you know, and acting on end lags, right? So while Kalcharo is doing Death Messenger, you can be on Jinshi and be doing her ear walks, and if you're fast enough, you can do maybe 2-3 hits on Jinshi, swap back to Kalcharo when his DM finishes, because he'll still be grounded, and once he hasn't left the field, when you swap back to him, you can continue what you were doing. If you were an ultimate, you do your DM, you swap to Jinshi, you do a couple hits on Jinshi, swap back to Kalcharo before he disappears off field when he hits the ground. Then you can continue building up your next DM, whatever the case may be. Things like that really create a more intricate play style than I feel a lot of people give the game credit for, because a lot of them are afraid to kind of explore quick swap more. And that kind of action syncing kind of really determines how well you can play the game. Like, you can definitely get S0 characters to clear a TOA fight in like 30 seconds based off of that. Some people would struggle to do it at 2 minutes, and you can use that same team, same gear, same resources, and do it in 30 seconds. All based on how well you're able to sync buffs and sync actions and all that stuff. The mindset behind getting better inherently leads you to swapping more, because it makes you a more efficient player. And the team building aspect of this is impacted because I'm just kind of rambling here, guys, so forgive me if it takes me a while to get to my point. But I was thinking the team building aspect of it is kind of influenced because you want to then inherently find characters that are synergetic with each other. For example, when you're in ult with Zhang Liao and you press E, right? He does that dash up uppercut that has a delay to it. That uppercut, that delay is an opportunity to swap to serve, for example, Chongli, and use her E, the first part, you know, the zigzag into the air, and then you can swap back to Zhang Liao before he reaches peak distance on his uppercut. You can swap back to him, land his revamp, and then you can swap back to you know, when you hit the ground, press E, and then after that you can swap back to Changli when she hits the ground, and then you can do her true sight. And you basically just stacked 2 animations, saved yourself a lot of time, progressed the character's mechanics, and ultimately did a lot of damage in that time period, right? Because now your characters are both going to be closer to getting their ultimates. They're both sharing resonance energy with each other. They're overlapping uses of resources, which means these resources will be back in closer proximity to each other, causing you to basically focus on only doing the necessities on characters and not spending time doing things like basic attack. In most cases, unless it's integral for the character, there's no reason to sit there and basic attack. I mean, I'll definitely put it a bit more into action, and kind of show you guys a little bit of what I mean. But I'll probably attach a run to the end of this and kind of show how impactful that synergy is, even if it's something small. But the idea is, people tend to they don't look at character synergy as a team mechanic, which is crazy to me, because that's even more so a team mechanic than an intro outro. How well characters function together, how much can they be compatible with each other when you use them. That's a thing in itself that kind of really determines how good a team is, right? Like, for example, I love Kalcharo Zhang Liao because they're very compatible. It's difficult to play because you have to be really good at swapping, but it's really rewarding. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say on the topic. It's just kind of like a random ramble. But hopefully you guys kind of got something out of it. I'll probably do these more often if they communicate anything at all to to whoever manages to catch me yapping. But yeah, I'll catch you guys later, man. Have a nice day.